Wichita's radio voice of Kansas City Royals baseball, KFH.
Jacob Albrocht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
He's got all the insight on what you want to know and maybe some of what you don't want to know. Here's K-State insider Tim Fitzgerald.
All right, welcome back, everybody. A little sandstorm means Tim Fitzgerald joins us. GoPowerCat.com. That's Tim's jam. Jacob Albrocht, Tommy Castor, headed into the holiday weekend. Tim, what are you throwing on the grill this weekend?
Oh, boy, I haven't even thought that far ahead. I got to go to the store. I'm panicking now.
I haven't either. Hopefully it's not. Here's what I'll ask you. It's a blind question for you, Tim. What sounds more appetizing? Tommy's ribs or Jacob's hot legs?
Is this about food?
Does it matter?
Because I'm sure Tommy's ribs and Jacob's hot legs are sexy. It just depends on the moment. They actually sound both pretty good. I mean, it depends on
We're gonna have a little
what I'm looking for.
We're gonna have a little cooking. We're gonna have a little cooking, and we'll see what everybody thinks. Tommy's pretty confident. It wasn't a competition before about a half hour ago, but I'm starting to think it sort of is now.
Hey, and by the way, Fitz, you're invited. So if you'd like to, take
come
a
up
jaunt
to
come down to Wichita on Sunday and try Jacob's hot legs, I guess you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, well, I'm now thinking of Rod Stewart's songs. So anyhow, that might be a too old of a reference for either one of you.
Tim, I don't. It is. If there is a slow time, it's slow. K-State had a huge win in baseball, right? They knocked off Texas. We don't follow Big 12 baseball that closely, but K-State baseball's been interesting this year. I mean, where do they stand? Are they at large-y? They've been very, very all over the map as far as like rankings and what different publications have them at. Are they in a win and in situation, or are they at large capable?
That's a good question. I think until beating Texas yesterday, they were out. They had finished the season so miserably, winning 2 of their last 7, as far as I can remember. It was just a horrible ending. And but now they might be peeking back in on the edge of things. This afternoon's game, I think it's this afternoon, with Kansas is huge. Not intended as an insult to Kansas. They are the 8th seed, so losing to them might guarantee that they're out. So they pretty much need to win this thing and get back with another crack at TCU. They're just not playing their best baseball in the final phase of the regular season. I fear they're out, but they're closer to in after beating Texas. And how about Texas? The number 1 seed comes in and loses 2 games and goes home. So I think that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I was reading up on the upset yesterday, Tim, and I didn't realize the shutout that K-State had against Texas yesterday was their first in the Big 12 tournament since 1976. So we've been talking a long time since K-State able to shut out a team in the Big 12 tournament. What does that tell you about the way this team can bounce back? I mean, obviously giving up 16 runs in that opening game against TCU, then coming back and completely shutting out Texas.
Yeah, well, TCU's putting up numbers on everyone. They did the same kind of thing to Kansas. Yeah, it's been interesting. They have a really good team. They just haven't been consistent enough. And I don't, when you get to the postseason, you got to have a level of consistency, or you just don't stand much of a chance. So we'll see. Look, I've been around college sports a lot, and I've seen a lot of bubble watches through my days. This feels like a team that's out, but we'll find out what the committee does, because Big 12 baseball, maybe not as good as the SEC, but it's pretty darn good.
Yeah, it's been an interesting conference all year. All right, Fitz, let's talk hoops. It's still not really any player movement here. I mean, it's May 26th. I know we've got decisions to be made with the NBA draft in the next 2 weeks, but it's starting to get to the point where we need to see some guys here pretty soon.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this was still early by last year's schedule, seemingly. This is about when we started to wonder if he was going to have a basketball team a year ago, but Jerome Tang seemed to pull that out just fine. But, the rules changed a little bit this year. Nobody's going into the portal as of now. The only guys that can kind of be a surprise would be, grad transfers who don't technically have to go into the portal. They're just grad transfers. So we'll find out who drops out of that NBA draft. That seems to be what they're on hold with some guys, but they wouldn't be the only ones contending for them. There are still some pretty good players out there. We'll see how this all pans out, but they have 3 spots they still need to fill.
What do we know about the players Fitz from the Wildcats that are testing the NBA waters? Obviously, Keontae Johnson, Naquan Tomlin, I know, is going through that process. What sort of feedback have you heard that these players are getting, and what does it look like for their future prospects?
Well, I'll be shocked if Naquan doesn't come back. I'm not hearing much about him. I hope he's getting good feedback because he has an NBA game inside of him. It's just not there yet. Keontae's left that door open, but it's one of those doors that appears to be shut, but it just isn't latched. That's how gone he is. I'm seeing projections of him late first or second round, and he's pushing 24. He's been through a lot. His value isn't going to go up with age. Unless someone delivers a huge NIL deal, I'll be surprised if he returns.
But is it enough to keep up with the Joneses? Like, we've seen Kansas have, an up and down off season, but it's now landed in the point where Kansas, to me, is going to be the favorite next year. Because that's where K-State sort of elevated itself last 2. So if it's keeping up with Kansas, they haven't done that now, at least to this point. I don't think it's possible at this point, quite frankly.
Yeah, especially with yesterday's revelation. But I'm not going to pass judgment on this. He's earned that after last year, but I also don't blame people for getting a little worried about this. We'll see how it pans out. They feel really good about their incoming freshman. They feel really good about Taj Manning, who redshirted this year. So the question becomes, does he get his experience at the guard position that he was seeking? I mean, that's really the big question. Yeah, he certainly would like to have an athletic big man coming out of Kansas. Certainly looks like he might be the top of that list right now. After, I guess, a little bit surprising not committing to Duke. So we'll see how it goes. I'm willing to give him some more time. I just feel like they're pretty confident in their plan as they were last year, and I don't think it's blind confidence. I think they just know that there's enough talent out there that they can get.
Let's shift gears here a little bit, Fitz, and talk football. Cat Backers event going on this week, and got Coach Kleiman and others traveling around the state talking to different people. We had Colin Klein on the show on Tuesday. It was great to talk to him and catch up with him. What are you hearing as far as off season and where things stand right now for Kleiman and football?
Well, Chris Kleiman had an interesting comment at yesterday's Cat Backer event. Maybe Topeka, I'm not sure, that he knows where he's going to end his career, and it's at Kansas State. And then we wake up this morning and see Iowa Athletic Director Gary Barta, who's retiring. And I think that secret fear of all K-Staters, not even that secret, is that Gene Taylor will go back to Iowa as AD, and they probably need to make a coaching change eventually up there. And that seems a little scary for everyone. We'll see how that plays out. But I think Chris Kleiman is beginning to grasp it as the Big 12 evolves into something a little bit different. He has an opportunity to build the program in his conference. And, he's not doing it on the cheap. He's not doing it cutting corners. He's building this thing with a great foundation of recruiting and coaching. And I think he's right. I think he has an opportunity. It's going to kind of have to thread the needle to get to where Bill Snyder was, back in the day. But where Bill Snyder was back in the day would certainly rule the roost in this new Big 12, at least in the short term.
this Iowa thing is interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like Gene Taylor is. They could, if he just rides it out at this point. I mean, they may put a statue up of Gene Taylor in Manhattan. Is it really that appealing to go back? I was a mess, man. I mean, Gene Taylor's not a spring chicken. No offense to Gene Taylor, but do you really want to like take on that stress and pressure when like you're good in Manhattan probably forever at this point?
Yeah, and Gene's 65. He doesn't act it or look it, or I don't even know what acting and looking like 65 is anymore. That whole concept has changed, aging. But does that make him less attractive to Iowa, or does that not matter to them? But it's been no great secret that Iowa is the place both Gene and Chris kind of call home, would be their place that they would like to go together. And kind of seeing one of the pieces, fall that could make that happen is a little nerve-wracking. But again, I don't see why you walk away from this. And I would think that, just some kind of showing by President Litton that Gene Taylor is valued and that, the coaches aren't the only ones who deserve raises, even though Gene just got one not too long ago. I mean, Gene's around the $900,000 mark, above it, I think, in terms of his contract value. And it looks like Gary Barta was just a hair over $1 million. So it seems like getting him to that wouldn't be that huge a deal. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. It just broke this morning, and so there's a lot to go on. But if anyone saw what Gene Taylor and Chris Kleiman saw beating Iowa State, they just have to see the post-game celebration on the field. I mean, that was really valuable to them as guys that have kind of been Iowa fans. Chris played at Northern Iowa, but Iowa's the school in the state of Iowa. So we'll see. I think Gene's not going anywhere for exactly what you said.
So let's say, just hypothetically, Fitz, that there is a change that's made, and if Gene Taylor happens to be the guy at Iowa, there's clearly potentially a trickle down effect there, right? Like it starts with Gene Taylor and then Chris Kleiman. What does that mean as you get further down the line? Like Colin Klein, and Klein's got a new contract and he wants to be a head coach someday. I mean, what is there I know that if Kleiman, has stated publicly that he wants to retire at K-State and be there for the rest of his career, how does everything else behind the scenes with the coordinators and all of that work?
Yeah, I think we all agree that Colin Klein potentially will eventually be the head coach at Kansas State. But I think we probably also agree that he's not quite ready for that. And that's a big step up at his age. Maybe he is. I think that would be everyone's first inclination would be to put him in place. I personally might look at Van Malone or Connor Riley. If Gene Taylor does leave, I think you probably bring home Larry Beach from Memphis, who seems like a logical hire, who's done a good job in Memphis, got something done there that hasn't been able to get done, and that's funding for fixing up the Liberty Bowl. There are a lot of dominoes that could start falling in different directions than we expected pretty soon if one of those guys departs. And again, I don't think it'll happen, but it is something to mull over here, and I hope Richard Linton understands that the importance of what's going on right now at K-State. My understanding is applications to Kansas State are way up again. No offense to the academic side of that equation, but I think that's because the front porch looks pretty damn good right now, and that'd be football and basketball, and it's inviting in a lot of potential students.
It is. That's the bottom line. People always say, how can these coaches make that much money? I always use the example of go look at Alabama enrollment before and after Nick Saban. You'll understand why real quick. Klein's age, we talked to Klein earlier this week. He was fantastic, as he always is, right? It's easy to understand his success. But I mean, the thing about that, Lincoln Riley has showed the path to that doesn't matter, right? Lincoln Riley was never a head coach. Lincoln Riley was young. Lincoln Riley clearly had it and everything else, and to the point where it even felt like Bob Stoops left early just to ensure they were able to keep him, the ultimate Oklahoma guy, right? That's the way that Klein is feeling to me. Now, you'd like to see maybe another year but is one more year as an offensive coordinator going to make him that much more qualified? I don't know. I don't know that. I think to me it becomes more of a question: is does he want to go to the NFL or not? Because that would become to me the more pressing decision to make.
And young coaches right now, young head coaches are kind of the trend. People are going younger and younger. With that comes a big risk. I mean, you can get someone that just clearly isn't ready in that point of their career to handle that kind of responsibility. But also the rewards are probably greater. I could make an argument that Lincoln Riley has been an incredible head coach, but probably had a lot of stuff to learn on the job.
But does it matter if you're a great recruiter? Does it matter if you're a great head coach? Wouldn't you rather have a great recruiter that has a learning curve than a great coach that can't recruit?
Well, I think as a head coach, you do have to be able to close. I mean, Deion's a different story. Deion Sanders is at the forefront of everything Colorado or Jackson State did in terms of recruiting. But I think the biggest thing for a head coach is being able to manage your staff and manage your locker room, because you can't lose control of either one. If your staff kind of pushes back on your youth, you got problems. You hired the wrong guys. If the locker room doesn't fully buy into you because of your youth, or you're just not good at managing a locker room, kind of cultivating that environment, which is things that we've seen both Chris Kleiman and now Jerome Tang do just to the top level of their profession. If you're not able to do that, if you lose your locker room, you're going to be in big trouble. But, we've seen older guys do that. Jimbo Fisher, hasn't managed his locker rooms exceptionally well. And that's, in part because of the NIL. But, there's a lot of moving parts there that can make a head coach successful. And, I mentioned his youth, but we've also seen a lot of older coaches finally get their crack and prove that they absolutely were not the guy to be a head coach. So it's kind of a crapshoot whether you hire young or old. But I would guess that would be the first reaction of Kansas State would be to bring in Colin Klein, just move him up. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Gene will leave. I don't think Chris is leaving. I think they're pretty settled in. They know what they've built, and they don't want to start over.
Well, we would be remiss, Fitz, to have you on and not talk conference realignment a little bit here. Of course, it changes day by day, right? Dennis Dodd with a couple of new articles this week about some drama with the ACC and everything going on with that. And then we get the report that Brett Yormark is meeting with representatives from UConn. Where do you stand right now? What are you hearing? What are your thoughts on the way that things are playing out right now?
Well, the continuing saga of the Pac-12 media rights and the fact that they can't find any is really the core of this story. And I think we're getting to the point now, finally. I thought it would happen earlier, but as we get towards June, you start to push deadlines for schools to be able to announce they're leaving their conferences. I know that certainly the Mountain West for San Diego State at the end of June, they want a decision on either the Big 12 or the Pac-12. They plan on moving if offered by either or both. And, certainly there's a lot more smoke right now around Colorado, and that they're prepared to do something. And I think that could come potentially from the tone that I'm reading from, people out there, is that Memorial Day weekend, before or after that could be the time this stuff drops. And once Colorado moves, or one team moves, I think Arizona will join them and at least show a strong intention of coming. The bottom basic problem here is the Pac-12 can't find the media money that they need to have to stick together. And if they start to crack, does the Big Ten and come in and take some schools in the Northwest? And I just think I still think the future is very bleak for that conference. And the ACC is a very complicated situation because of their contracts, but there seems to be a lot of confidence out there. If they really wanted to, they could crack that conference open and damn the grant of rights, they could dissolve the conference if they want to. It just seems like that's where it's headed, that they may not be placated enough by the media rights sharing, getting some success-based financials from the conference. There's just not enough money there. They're not going to be able to make up enough money, and taking away money from other members just isn't going to foster good relations there. So I think the ACC is going to open up too, and I think his discussions with UConn's all a chess play to try to move these other things along the path a little bit to show that he's planning on expanding and who wants in.
All right, Fitz. Time will tell, maybe. We say that every time, but it is coming. The clock is ticking on a lot of these decisions, and the summertime is a great time to make them. What do you guys have at Go Power Cat ready for people right now?
Well, we'll be back to baseball certainly today, but we've got our podcast up. I've got my daily deliveries up. I discussed basketball official John Higgins today on the daily delivery, and how he's kind of been an evil presence for a lot of fan bases in college basketball, but he also could be the guy now that he's moving out of officiating and into a supervisory role for a bunch of conferences that maybe could help improve college officiating across the board. But we'll see. But it is a little bit quieter right now, thankfully. I would like to have a Memorial Day weekend too. So let's see what all breaks loose. But at least I got some topics here to discuss over the next couple of days with my daily deliveries with Gene Taylor and the Iowa situation.
And the great competition of Jacob's Hot Legs versus Tommy's Ribs, which the invitation is open. Yes. If you guys need a food review, come on up, or come on down, I guess it is.
Is it Jacob's Hot Legs and Tommy's Sexy Ribs? I mean, I think that'd be better. I think that's better marketing.
Yeah, it's up to Tommy.
From your lips to God's ears.
Yes, indeed. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, and let's all remember why we have Memorial Day.
That's right. Thank you, Tim. Good reminder. Hope everybody does take that moment to remember why it is that we get to do hot legs and ribs and all these things. That's the reason for the season for sure. All right, Tim, be good. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, boys. Bet.
There goes Tim Fitzgerald, our K-State insider. We'll come back. More Sports Daily. Let's talk about this Patrick Mahomes contract situation. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily. It's all Brockton Caster. It is a Friday, getting ready for the Memorial Day weekend. A lot of chatter on the video stream about our little cooking contest we've got going this weekend. Joe, I noticed Tommy throws up the first comment there.
Let's go, Joe.
Because he goes to Tommy. But Jad is team Hot Legs. Jad commenting in there. Just the same. There's Jad. Thanks, everybody, by the way, for watching us. You can listen to us, of course, always on KFH, and we love and appreciate that. But you can now, if you're not by the radio or able to stream us or whatever, we do have this video feed that you can find on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. Glad to have you in both places. Glad to see everybody here. This contract for Patrick Mahomes, Tommy, there was a report from Florio that he suspects or expects this to get done. We've heard the chatter. Mahomes comes out this week now, and just to set it up, Patrick Mahomes soon, when whatever the deal Burrow and Herbert get, Mahomes will be like the 9th highest paid quarterback by guaranteed money or yearly salary or whatever. There's different ways to look at those contracts. I don't think it matters. So, it's interesting because we had that report and then it was like, is there really urgency on this? And that seemed odd, but, felt like – and the Chiefs have talked about it, that they want to get the deal done. But Patrick Mahomes comes out in OTAs this week to just sort of reestablish publicly that his priority is not to make sure he's the highest paid quarterback. It's more about winning championships and legacy, which he's in a unique position to do. But he also talks about his desire and need for everybody else to continue the bar in the right direction, like for the other quarterbacks in the league. Mahomes he just always gets it right in how he approaches and talks about this stuff. Because, and I think there's a ton of truth to that. There is pressure when you're in a union like that to continue to, raise salaries for your peers, which he could absolutely do. There's also this, loyalty to the Chiefs he has. And the other elephant in the room, Tommy, is Patrick Mahomes is going to earn more than most quarterbacks because he's the most marketable athlete in America right now. And so it is a different situation than a lot of these guys face. Do you see, Joe Burrow in a lot of ads at this point? Is he in everything? You know what I mean? Like, it is different. Do you see Lamar Jackson in every ad that you can see? Like, it's different for these guys. So, different priorities for different people, and I totally get it. I've contended, and I brought this up to the national audience last weekend. I'll bring it up again tomorrow when I jump on there. I think there's a real chance here that there is something unique about this next Mahomes contract, like that we've never seen before. I think somebody was floating around, it may have been Florio again on Pat McAfee yesterday, floating around the idea of a percentage of the salary cap and Burrow being a candidate to do something like that. That makes sense to me. But I think with Mahomes, it gets bigger. Mahomes has an interest in owning pro teams, right? He's a minority owner of the Royals. He and his wife own the women's soccer franchise there, the Current. I think there's a real chance there could be some sort of partnership at an organizational level between the Chiefs and Mahomes that could become that thing in his next contract that's unique and allows these things to happen. Now, I don't know the rules of that in the NFL.
You got to be real careful about that.
Well, but remember when the Dolphins and Brady got in trouble, really the Dolphins, that was a part of that, right? Like the whole report was that he was going to go be their quarterback and be a part owner. What I mean about the rules, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just don't know how it affects a salary cap. So like let's say Mahomes comes in and they're like, yeah, we want to make you a part of the ownership group or give you a stake in the team and all these things. How do you evaluate that, right, against the salary cap? That's what I'm not real sure of and where that could get a little dicey. But I think that if there's any player in sports, right, that any pro team would like to make sure they never have any other part of any other organization, Mahomes is right at the top of that list. And we see it all the time, right? Think about New England. They let Tom Brady go to Tampa and win a Super Bowl. Think about Indianapolis. They let Peyton Manning go to Denver and win a Super Bowl. Okay, that kind of sucks for them a little bit. You don't want that to happen if you're the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. You've got it with George Brett, right? You got it with George Brett and the Royals. You want the same sort of thing. So I don't know how that looks. I think it's unique, but I think it's reassuring, again, if you're a Chiefs fan, to hear Mahomes say those things. It's championships. Like, look, I there are responsibilities I have to get this deal and do. But at the forefront of it all will be this cohesion with the front office to make sure they've got the flexibility they need to do what they need to do.
One thing we know about Patrick Mahomes is that he's always going to say the right thing and do the right thing. That's just the way that he is. It's the way that he's built. It's the way that he has acted in his entire career in Kansas City. And so there's no reason to doubt him or his intentions because he's never shown a reason to do that. He's never shown a reason otherwise. So when he talks about legacy being the most important thing to him and making sure that there's money in the budget to have talented players around him to win championships, I believe him because he's never given me any reason not to believe him when he's talking about those sort of things. Now, the other thing that I can say is that the Chiefs organization and Clark Hunt and Brett Veach, they've never given me any indication that they aren't fully committed in making sure that they take care of this transformational quarterback that the Chiefs have had on their roster for the last 6 seasons, and they want to have him on their roster his entire career, right? So, nobody has a crystal ball, so you don't know what's going to happen a decade from now or 15 years from now or whatever that is. But what I do know is that at least here in the short term, there will be a new contract for Patrick Mahomes, and it will elevate him to a level that we haven't seen in the NFL whenever that time comes, whether that's here, before this season or, sometime in the future. It will reset the market. That's just the way that it is. Doesn't matter when it's going to come down, but it is nice to hear from Mahomes that at least, from his voice, that in his mind, that's not the most important thing on the table right now.
It is such a slippery slope, right? I'm sure Indianapolis, when Peyton Manning was 28 years old, would have said the same thing. in New England when Tom Brady was 28 years old would have said the same thing, right? But Peyton Manning got hurt, and Tom Brady got old, and then there had to be uncomfortable. Look at what just happened with Aaron Rodgers. There has to be uncomfortable conversations. That's where it's a bit of a slippery slope, right? And yeah, the Chiefs have navigated it wonderfully now, but the success on the field has made it easy to do that, right?
I just don't understand what the point is.
Success on the field isn't there.
I don't understand what the point is of getting, and I'm not saying you're getting worked up, but just in general, getting worked up about what might happen 10 years from now. I understand putting together a contract that takes care of him and the organization for as long as possible, resets the market, whatever, all of that, I'm totally on board with, because you've got to pay this guy who has been the catalyst for, this dynasty that's in place. But also, I kind of am interested in living in the moment and living in this season and, next season or whatever, as opposed to 10 years from now. We don't know what's going to happen.
What the reason it's important and the reason it's relevant is because there is this mutual desire to not hamstring the franchise's ability to spend money on other players. So if they're trying to accomplish all of these goals, for Mahomes, it's taking care of his peers and what they'll be able to bring on the open market, right? For the Chiefs, it's not hamstringing the franchise financially. And Mahomes has that interest there as well because he wants to win as many championships as he can. Okay, so all of those things, right, are in play here. So creativity is going to have to come into play if all of those things can be accomplished. That's why it's interesting. That's why I think there's going to be some creative element involved in it that makes this different than other deals that we've seen. Because the simple answer for everybody, right, is for the Chiefs just to say, Mahomes, you're going to be the highest paid quarterback. But they don't want that, and neither does Mahomes. Not in that way, right? And it's different for different guys. Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, we think, and Justin Herbert, we think, as they do. Their top priority is going to be to make as much money as they possibly can. Right now. I mean, that's that's going to be the priorities for their deals, we think, because history tells us it is. It isn't very often where you get this situation. The two that I can remember the most are Romo and Brady, and I'm sure there have been other guys that have done it, but those two jump to the front of my mind as guys who have done creative things in order to allow the franchise to spend and do these things. So Mahomes clearly wants to do that, but what is that? What does that look like? Is it just basically redoing the current deal that they have with more money involved because the cap's gone up? I suppose that's on the table, right? Because they just restructured Mahomes this year to free up money. That's the contract. The Romo and Brady contracts just kept getting restructured to free up more money. They allowed that flexibility. That's what Mahomes' deal he's currently on does. Maybe they just redo that. I don't know. But I just have this feeling that there's going to be some element of creativity involved in it, that because the Chiefs are going to want to, sort of extend that back to Mahomes, because Mahomes is extending them a favor here. He's extending himself a favor, to try to win championships, but he's extending them a favor in not making sure that he makes $60 million a year right now, because he could easily do that, and they would say, yes, sir, let's sign that deal tomorrow if that's what we really need to do. So I don't know. I don't know what happens here. It is going to be very interesting. I think the one thing that's changed in the last 24 hours or so is the sense of urgency, because I don't get that sense from Mahomes that there really is any sense of urgency. It needs to get done. There is a timing element involved, but that report that it's like a clock is ticking to the start of the next season, I don't know. I don't think it's kind of like Chris Jones. They're going to let the market play out and then get after it and do what they need to do. But I don't sense any urgency on a new Mahomes deal.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the important thing, right, is that you are making sure that you're in lockstep. And I know that I've heard Brett Veach on the record talking about that they have an open line of communication with Mahomes and his representatives and all of that, and we've talked before about, isn't it Lee Steinberg that represents Mahomes? We've talked about how successful he's been as far as, the deals that he's made and that sort of thing. And so it sounds to me that there is as positive of a relationship that there possibly can be between Mahomes, his representatives, and the franchise. And as long as that continues, and as long as there's an open line of communication, as long as, priorities are in place on both sides and everybody is working together towards a common goal, then I've got no concerns whatsoever about the timeline on this, about, the terms of the deal, anything like that. And I would argue that the majority of the time that you've got situations that start to get messy, and I mean, look at Aaron Rodgers in that situation. All of a sudden, you had the player, the representatives, and the organization no longer on the same page, no longer communicating well, or really even communicating at all, and then things break down. And I think that's one thing that Mahomes and Veach have made very sure that they are doing at a high level, is communicating constantly. And so, I would imagine that if Mahomes went to Veach or Steinberg went to Veach and said, all right, the time is now. We need to get this done right now. It's important to us to get this done and get it taken care of. They would probably figure out a way to get it done. I just don't get that indication that that's really happening right now.
And all of those things exist, and they do, and it takes a certain type of personality and Patrick Mahomes to be able to do that. The only thing that's got to, I think, just sort of stick in the back of our minds that can be filed away is if the success goes away, so does this friendliness, I think. And I don't think that's going to happen. I'm not saying I do. Just saying the only place I feel urgency is from a home side is like anything can happen. And if we're not, going to AFC championships every year and all of these things, these mutual interests begin to change a little bit. And that is, a place where if you're Mahomes, you got to pay. And he did say, look, he said, like, I've already made enough money that I don't ever need to make any more money and I'll be fine. And that matters, right? Because I think not everybody feels that way. I would feel that way, I think, if I were in Mahomes' position, but he does feel a responsibility to his peers. But maybe that concern of it may not always be this way. Maybe that's not as big a concern for Mahomes, and that factors in too. But it will be fascinating. I think far more fascinating than Herbert and Burrow, who we think will just get paid a whole lot of money. How the next Mahomes deal is structured will be really, really interesting if you're a nerd for those things like we are. 869-1240 is the number to call. We'll come back. Sports Daily, plenty more to come. The IHOP hotline is open. 869-1240 is that number. More Sports Daily coming right back right after this.
You're listening to Sports Daily with Jacob and Tommy. Still to come, Jim Rome at 11 right here on KFH.
Oh, okay, take it easy. We're going on the air.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
Welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily. Glad to be here with you just ahead of the Memorial Day weekend. Tommy, LeBron James playing with a torn tendon in his right foot, saying he heard it pop. On the court cameras on February 26th against the Mavericks saw him saying, I heard it pop. Torn tendon in his foot. We're the same age as LeBron James. If I tore a tendon in my foot, I'd be out for like a month, right?
Yeah, there are sometimes I cough wrong and I can barely move, for like 10 minutes afterwards. So I can't imagine popping a tendon in my foot.
I have thrown my back out putting on socks. That is a true story. Man, I just can't fathom the athletic prowess sometimes of these dudes. So LeBron has this torn tendon. Guys were telling him, some doctors told him he needed to get that fixed, season-ending surgery. He found a doctor, I think, that helped him manage it, get through it. We remember how good he was in the Western Conference Finals. Two things. You got to deal with that if he's going to come back and play, and how much better could he be, right? So it's interesting. In LeBron James, I think he's playing next year, and obviously this has been lingering for a while. I suppose he'll just get it fixed. I don't know what the process of fixing a torn tendon in your foot is, but man, that's just add to the legacy. He didn't really talk about it. We never really heard about it that I can recall, other than seeing that video of him saying, I heard it pop. but just crazy. But age is catching up, and at what point does it slow him down? Clearly, while he was dealing with the injury, it didn't slow him down. So I suspect this will be fine, and he'll be able to get it done and taken care of and be back and be just fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to keep in mind that at the age that he's at right now, there might be a little bit of a longer recovery period than, let's say, if he was 25. But regardless, I mean, knowing the fact that he is, so physically gifted, I've got no doubt in my mind that, if he gets this fixed this offseason, that he'll be back ready to go. And knowing the kind of output he had, especially in the Western Conference Finals with the torn tendon in his foot, I can only imagine a fully healthy LeBron next season, what he'll be able to do.
Is there any doubt whatsoever, right, that he's coming back next year? Like, I just don't have, I feel like it's like a 0% chance he retires.
He'll be back. I would be blown away if LeBron does not play next season. I think that there is enough there with the core of the Lakers where he would feel like with a few off-season changes and additions that they could be a real competitor in the West. And knowing that and knowing that the window of opportunity is, still there, it's not closed all the way, there's not a doubt in my mind that he will be back next season.
Me neither. I just don't like 0% chance that he doesn't play next year. Zero. I feel like he's back. Crazy. Torn tendon in his foot. He comes and does that kind of stuff in the finals. So do you think, real quick on this, because Kyrie Irving doesn't deserve a ton of our attention at the moment, do you think any chance that they bring Kyrie Irving into the Lakers?
Yeah,
they can get him.
I think that they will.
They can get him.
I think that they will. I think they will. I mean, I think that the fact that, he found himself courtside, for the majority of that series and was there apparently supporting LeBron. I mean, I'm sure that those two guys have had conversations about what it might look like to team up. I don't know.
Is that like the only place that makes sense?
I guess. I mean, you mentioned that you don't want to give a ton of time right now to Kyrie. I don't know if I ever want to give a ton of time to Kyrie, but I mean, it's there, it's out there in the open. It wouldn't surprise me to, see him be a member of the Lakers next season.
Yeah, that's about the only path for him to be relevant anymore that I can see. I don't know what that means for the Mavericks. I don't know. We don't need to get too much into Kyrie Irving. He loves the attention. All right, 869-1240 is the IHOP hotline. Running out of time on that. We've given away some Wind Surge tickets. Let's give away a couple of it is Memorial Day weekend. Get you some iced tea. Let's give away a couple of free iced tea cards. Those work for you at HTO Wichita West or HTO Wichita East. You can get your hands on those and let that be a part of your celebration this weekend. Let's not forget why we celebrate this weekend, 869-1240. As we go to the break here, you can get your hands on those tea cards. We will tell you what's on tap when we return. We've got Royals all over the weekend here, all kinds of good stuff coming for you. It is Sports Daily. You'll have Jim Rome, Bob and Jeff, Maggie and Perlop, Zach Gelb, Royals tonight. We'll come back. We'll tell you what's on tap for the rest of the weekend. Get your hands on that giveaway right now. IHOP Hotline, first caller, HTO Free Tea. We'll be right back. We'll wrap up this Friday edition.